Thanks to everyone joining today as well. Really, really appreciate your time and coming along. And I hope there were some useful, some thought-provoking things in there for you. This is really now your time. I know that I've got some questions already that I'm happy to answer. But I wonder first if you could just start by thinking about what achievements you've had recently. I mean, please feel free to put anything in the chat room. Maybe in the last year or the last 2 years, what have your achievements been? And because it lifts our spirit, it makes us feel happy to look at what we've actually managed to achieve. So, I mean, for example, I wrote a book 2 years ago, and that was one of the biggest achievements of my life. To write an ELT book. But achievements can be big and they can also be small. An achievement for me is when I answer the phone in school and the person at the other end is happy with the information I've given, and maybe it leads to them booking a course with us. That is also an achievement. So let me know in the chat room as we're kind of going on if you've got any achievements that you would like to share. I'm just having a little look. Yeah, lovely. And as Hetty said at the beginning as well, if you've got any questions, please do put them into the Q&A. Let me just see what Michael's saying here. He's saying it's fairly new to the field of TEFL, not in a position to give talks or write articles. Very good question, Michael. Where can a new teacher begin? I think in terms of raising your profile, as a new teacher, just build your network at the moment, really, and do what you're doing, coming on to Gallery Teachers just now and starting to engage with people, starting to have those conversations and learning from each other and sharing ideas with each other. I think that is very much the first step for a new teacher. You're quite right, you don't want to run before you can walk. You want to enjoy this part of your teaching career. But there's always a space to be sharing your experiences. I went to a panel discussion 2 years ago, actually, and it was on the future of teacher training. And the panelists were very interesting. They had 3 panelists who had all recently done their CELTA or the Trinity TEFL course, and they were talking about their experiences as new teachers. And it was fascinating. It was so interesting to hear their struggles, their experiences, the things that they felt with their first class, their first challenging student, their first challenging question in the classroom. So there's always a place, Michael, but I do agree, enjoy what you're doing for now and focus on building your network and really just having a good time with the career. You're very welcome. Let me see, I think I saw another question come in there. Now, don't be shy. I want to see those achievements coming into the chat box, everyone. Don't be shy. That's the whole point of this. This is your time to shine, not to put yourself down. I have a question here that somebody shared earlier. So let me just see how do you know when it's time to move on, when it's time to either as a manager to move your teachers, to help your teachers and support them, or for yourself, which is a very interesting question. I think if it's you yourself, you start to know, and I think you start to know before you actually actively acknowledge it. You start to get that feeling that you're getting a bit itchy, you're getting a bit ready to move, to try something that's not your everyday. And I think when you get that feeling, act on it. If you're managing others, and also with your friend network, but if you're managing others, I think it's our job as managers to identify and to guide people in that as well, so that you don't have a team of people that are sitting still. And of course, people do this of their own accord as well. But I think as a manager, it is our job to really help and to facilitate, to encourage people to take opportunities, because I'm talking here about raising your professional profile, but we can also be talking about your professional development in general. And that might be just moving out of your comfort zone in terms of taking on a new course, for example, and reflecting on how you do with that and learning. So I think it's our own responsibility, but also that of the manager. what's coming in here? Callum is saying, I overheard students of mine saying they thought I was a good teacher, which felt like such, oh, isn't that lovely, Callum? Isn't that so nice? Yes, most definitely. And I think every day you must congratulate yourself for that. Every day in the life of a teacher is an achievement. You have changed people's lives. I'll tell you a little story here actually before I come on to the, oh, of course you felt very smug. Of course, and well deserved, you know, the amount of work that we put into every single class that we deliver. You know, I think it's such an achievement. If you've got a class of 10, a class of 14, in that class, you've got so many different people with so many different needs and backgrounds and cultural differences. And we as teachers, we hold all of that together. That is an incredible feat. You know, the CEOs of big companies in the city cannot often manage that kind of thing. And we are doing that day in, day out, lesson, lesson, every single lesson. So well done, Callum. But I think I was flying a few years ago. I was flying to Chile, and I got on the plane, and the flight attendant came up and he said to me, "Are you Fiona Dunlop?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Are you vegetarian?" I said, "Yes." Still a logical question on a plane. And he said, "Do you teach English?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Oh," he said, "you were my first teacher 30 years ago." And he remembered me and he said, "You changed my life. I wanted to go into something with languages after your class." Now, I think back then I probably was not a very good teacher. I was only just starting out and I had a lot to learn. But it just showed me the impact that we make on students' lives. And we are doing that every single day, aren't we, as teachers and in this profession? So it's time for some self-congratulation to all of you.
Exactly. And I can see that Janice has just added that she made a whole series of TEFL animation videos.
Wow.
That's a wow, exactly.
Isn't that? My goodness. Janice, that's incredible. Well done.
Yeah, exactly. And what I did, for instance, for the first time was really like due to the lockdown and the times that we are living at the moment, is I started teaching online as well, IELTS, for instance,
Uh-huh.
and I just loved it.
Yeah.
It's so time consuming to prepare for the lessons, to get ready for the lessons, but I love it. So it's something different, doing the same thing in a different way,
Yeah.
and I really love that.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I don't know, I can't see the faces of others, but I know that I'm smiling away here. Hedy, you're smiling. I hope that everyone who's tuning in is also smiling. Because look at what it's doing. It's lifting us already, just recognizing all these things in ourselves. And that's really the first step, isn't it? To raising our profile is to finding that confidence to put ourselves forward for new challenges.
Exactly, and also like attending webinars like this one, where we just, even if we just take one thing away from each, it's amazing because it adds to ourselves,
Yeah.
to who we are, and really, so
Yeah, no, most definitely, most definitely. And I think, I mean, you used an expression there, Hedy, that I think we do hear a lot. You know, something is time consuming, and learning something new is time consuming. And of course it is. But if we turn that on its head and make it positive, I mean, you know, I like going out to restaurants. I could also say that's time consuming. But it's a time consuming pleasure, isn't it? And I think trying to find pleasure in learning those new skills is very rewarding.
and it's very important to have novelty in our life. This is something that propels us forward, because without that it just becomes monotonous and boring, and
Yeah.
so we don't want that. So
Yeah.
even if we do the same thing but in a different way, that's already new, that's
Yeah.
already novelty. So
Yeah, that's completely right. Callum is just saying here in the chat room, he's saying, I was wondering, does any of your advice differ if you're outside the UK? Or is there any specific advice you'd have for raising your profile outside the UK? I'm based in France. Callum, I think more so than ever before, the world is our oyster. I think we can dip into international networks so much more easily because we've all become so au fait with the world of online. And so I think it's easier for us to, and more within our comfort zones, to join Zoom meetings, to join networking groups. So I would say no, to be honest. I think that, you know, you can pop into things all over the world. You can, everything that I said also applies. For example, I was delivering a webinar a few months ago, run by an organization in Pakistan. I've got another webinar coming up with Asia TEFL, and it's fascinating to dip into those networks. You know, to talk to a group of teachers, all based in Vietnam, and they put their cameras on, and you can see their backgrounds, and you can, you know, it takes you to another place. So I think if you're based in France, what I would say though, Callum, is that there's also TEFL France. Is it France? Yeah, TEFL France. Great organisation. They've got a really good network over there. TESOL France, excuse me. And they run really good conferences. Lots of opportunity for networking as well.
I have a question to Fiona. Regarding teachers who work in a school environment, who do you think, whose responsibility do you think it is to raise a teacher's professional profile? Is it the teachers themselves, or the DOS, director of studies, the academic manager, the principal? Who is responsible for that?
Yeah, great question. I think it's a bit of both. And first of all, what I would say is raising your professional profile is not necessarily for everybody. This is about moving out of your comfort zone, building your network, recognizing your achievement in order for you to get self-satisfaction and more opportunities, and for you to be known in the ELT world, possibly. It does go hand in hand with professional development, though. And I think professional development, whether it's to raise your profile or not, professional development, I think, is the responsibility of every single one of us. I think, of course, there should be a culture within your organization of lifelong learning and development. And that should be running and integrated throughout the whole school system, throughout the ethos. And so that should be visible in the things that your DOS does, the things that the principal does, but also professional development. I think for it to really be meaningful, it must come from you. But what the manager should be doing, I believe, is matching the person with the opportunities, facilitating the professional development opportunities in line with the school direction and the school values, so that everything is tying nicely together. So I think that's a very long answer there to basically saying that I think it belongs to us, make it belong to ourselves, take responsibility for it. But also, if you're managing teams, it should be led by both sides, basically, and guided through.
I agree. So I think once we decide that we want something, it needs to come from within. We need to have that inner drive, and I think we have that because we couldn't live without dreams. And this is kind of a dream, you know, when I want to take a step further and expand a little bit. So once we set our eyes on something, then we'll find others helping us, and we'll find the opportunities opening up.
Definitely. So, I mean, I think what I would add to that is it's the manager's job, it's the school's job, it's their responsibility to open up the box, to show teachers what is available, where they can go, and to know the teachers' strengths, to know their areas of interest, and to get to know your staff in order to really help them through that journey. I think that's where our role lies very strongly.
Yes. And you know, when you were showing us the SWOT tool on the screen, I noticed that there were ideas listed for the strengths and opportunities part of the tool, but you left the weaknesses and the threats empty. Was that intentional?
It completely was. And I saw people chatting in the chat room about this as well. They automatically started to talk about weaknesses. And what I was trying to do is encourage us to move away from that. Because you see it so often when I've done a SWOT analysis completely with an audience, or even try it with your students. If you do something like this with your students, ask them what their strengths and weaknesses. Normally, I would say, anecdotally, about 90% of your students would start with the negatives, wouldn't they? They will start with the weaknesses. It's where we look. And this is not the aim of this exercise. Of course, there's a place to look at where we've got areas to develop. But what I'm suggesting is that we really identify what we're good at, because I don't think we do that enough. And again, as teachers, as managers in this profession, we're always looking forward to help other people, to help students, to help teachers, to help our organization, to help our clients. And it's very easy to lose sight of ourselves. And I'm suggesting that we take time to really boost ourselves, to build our confidence and build some self-belief in order to move on and build on that, rather than just look at the negatives.
It's really symptomatic, actually, when you ask your students, say, what do you think about your progress? And they start talking about what they are not good at.
Yes, I know.
And
I know.
why do you think it is so? Why are we so obsessed with,
I think we're very self-critical, and I know that I can also be very self-critical, and I'm a strong believer in really training myself out of things like that. So intentionally, I will think about the language and try to think about positive language to use, because it's not something that I don't know if it's human nature, it's not my area of expertise, but it does seem to be very common that when we're talking about ourselves, we often focus on the weaknesses rather than the strengths. So I'm saying shake that off and try a little bit of bigging yourself up, for lack of a better expression.
And actually, it may come from our early education, where it's very interesting that you need to study geography, biology, chemistry, maths, literature, grammar, everything. And you do not notice, I mean, as a kid, I didn't notice the fact that I had one teacher to teach geography, a completely different one to teach biology, another one to teach literature, and they always seemed to be perfect. They always, knew the answers to everything. But we didn't notice that one teacher, was dedicated to one subject.
Yeah.
And so we came across these people who knew the answers to everything and corrected you and pointed out your mistakes. But we didn't make the link that one person for one subject. So it's not for everything. And then
no, very good point.
Yeah.
Let me see. I see there's another comment here. So Gabby is saying we're obsessed with our weaknesses. And I think balance is required for professional development, most definitely.
And she said that I know teachers who are obsessed with strength. I think balance is required for professional development.
Yes.
So true.
Yeah, I think the more we practice reflection and reflective practice as a team, as individuals, given the tools, given the space to practice, the better we become at actually identifying this. Because you're quite right, Gabby, there are some people that get it so wrong and identify strengths that we as managers maybe would dispute slightly.
I think reflection is very important. I actually read about Benjamin Franklin, who was a practitioner of personal reflection. And what he would do at the end of a long day at work, he would go home and would reflect on his day. So he would sit in a quiet corner in his home somewhere, and he would consider all of the actions, whether they were positive or constructive, or they were of the negative sort, in need of repair. So he went through in his mind all of these, and by clearly knowing what he was doing wrong or what he could have been done, better in his days, he could take immediate steps to improve and advance himself. And there are people who actually keep a written inventory of their day, focusing on various aspects like personal care, interaction with others, or their thoughts. So they really reflect on these things.
Yeah.
And I think we need to face what is to be able to aim for more.
Completely, yes. And I think that's the crucial step, isn't it? Because again, if we just reflect on a daily basis for the sake of reflecting, then that's very nice, but that's only part of the journey. We need to think about what action we want to take. And that's whether you're focusing on the weaknesses or the positives. That with the positives, what I'm suggesting is that you reflect, you identify your strengths, your positives, your achievements, and then build upon them, because that makes us feel better and better. And it also identifies for us some areas of expertise. If you do these sorts of exercises regularly, then you will find an area of interest that you maybe didn't know was there. I mean, you're already mentioning about teaching IELTS online. Now, from that being something that you've achieved, you can then develop that into one of your strengths, become an expert in it, talk about it, write about it. And there are so many different magazines, ELT journals that are looking for real practical ideas, aren't they? So, it's about building on the things that we're enjoying and really making them strong for us. And before you know it, you'll be the next course book writer.
I already wrote one online course, language awareness and grammar module. It's a tiny one, but I'm so proud.
Yeah, wonderful. No, very good.
Exactly. And actually, when it comes to reflection, I think it's a good idea. I mean, we need to have courage to face ourselves to start with. And if we have enough courage to face ourselves, then we can include others as well. For instance, our students,
Yeah.
and ask for their opinions, or even our colleagues. That might be one of the aims of being observed as well.
Yeah. Yeah, most definitely. I think it's certainly about collaboration and supporting each other, and that includes the students as well.
Exactly. And I actually saw another question, Fiona, in the chat room. It says for many language schools, they have limited budget for CPD. What would be a good way to make CPDs more readily available?
Oh, that's a very good question.
Yes.
Now, the first thing I would say with that is, please do, if you weren't there already, please do go back and watch the recording on Gallery Teachers of the last webinar I did, because there are lots of different CPD opportunities that don't involve money. It's really about knowing how to pitch the CPD so that it's the correct level for you, it's relevant to you, and then there are many different ways that you can integrate professional development into your life without it having to be something like a costly conference to attend or something. So it's about small, regular, integrated ways of developing that will suit you. I'm not sure if that helps the person who was asking the question there. I'm just having a little look. Do you remember, Hedy said at the beginning, if anyone wants to raise their hand, they're more than welcome to continue the discussion as well with us.
Exactly.
But I think, yes, professional development there, and I do think, as I said, it's about little, often, regular with CPD. So, for example, if we're speaking to a teacher here, if you find, and again, if we use Hedy's example of IELTS, IELTS online, you can then start to do some research, do some reading, practice doing different things within your classroom, share this with a colleague, share it with a buddy, a mentor, and start to work together. All of that is professional development. It's not costing anything.
Exactly. And I have another question, Fiona. What do you recommend for someone? You were talking about people who may feel stuck because they are bored. But so what do you recommend for someone who feels stuck in a sense that they do not know what they want? Because to be honest, I've been there, and it was terrifying because most of the time I know what I want, and I have a direction to follow. But that time that happened, I mean, I was around 30 or 31 years old, and I just didn't know what I wanted.
Mm.
And it's what can you, and I got over that.
Uh-huh.
I had a technique to get over that, but what could you, or what would you say to someone who finds themselves there?
I think that's a very, very good question, because we're all going to be at that stage at various times in our lives. I think, um, going back to what I mentioned before in this workshop, I think sometimes we go through that alone, and building our network and that community of support and having those discussions with our peers can show us opportunities that we'd never considered. Because I think very, very often as a teacher, we think that we need to go into management as the career step. But having those discussions, so building up your network, and as I mentioned previously, building up your network not only in the obvious direct areas, so not just teachers groups if you're a teacher, but dipping into the other sides of ELT. There are many different communities within ELT, and finding your way like that. So I think communicating and having a safe person to talk to. That can also be, of course, it can be someone in your school. If you're working in a school, it could be your line manager, and talking that through. I think as a teacher, one of the roles as your director of studies is to help you to identify ways of stopping you get into a rut. It's not, you're not going with a problem that's unsolvable if you talk to your director of studies about that. The other thing that I would mention is that there's a, if you look on Google, or if you see the link in my last webinar, British Council English Agenda has a framework for teachers to identify where you are in your career, and also what opportunities there are for you at each level, so that you're not running before you can walk. And I would recommend that you have a look there. I just saw a curious comment coming in from Gabby there about being cynical. Where's Gabby's cynical comment? Let me see. I can't read that.
It's the one right before that, right above that.
I know a teacher. I know a teacher who started his own blog, and getting more hits and has become more important for him at some point than the actual ideas he was writing about. Jigging and raising one's profile, there's a risk to losing sight of. Oh yes, of course, yes. That's not cynical at all, Gabby. I think that's where regular checking in with yourself and checking in with a safe friend, with a buddy, with a colleague is important, so that you're not, it's not going to your head, you're not losing sight of who you are and where you want to go. So regular check-ins, why are you doing something? And that works for everything, whether it's that you're getting more caught up and more obsessed with the hits you're getting than your actual content, or whether it's why you're still doing the same job that you're doing 10, 20 years down the line. I think checking in and asking why you're doing something. So I wouldn't say that's cynical at all. I think, yes, it's good not to lose sight of the reason that you started something.
Yeah, I think it's like, in whether it goes amazingly well, or whether if the responses are not really to our liking. In both cases, we need to try and stay as balanced as we can, because it's people's opinions.
Yes, so, no, of course, yes.
And I actually have something to add, Fiona, to your previous ideas before Gabi's question about what to do when somebody feels a little bit stuck. And sometimes it might actually help just to have a little bit of break. And when I say a little bit of break, it does not necessarily mean to stop teaching, giving up teaching. It's just to focus on something slightly different outside of TEFL. And because that's actually what happened to me, I found some interest outside of that. and it just helped me so much with my teaching career as well.
Yeah.
So it's incredible.
Completely. Yes, I agree. I mean, it is very easy for days and weeks sometimes to run into one and you're thinking, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And I think we experience that in every single line of work. So I think taking a little bit of time out and a break, as you say, is very, very useful. And also, I mean, to add to that, I would also say I'm not suggesting that people are continuously developing, every minute of the day, and that they must become superstars in ELT. There is a place for us just also to sit still and to enjoy what we're doing in the moment and to appreciate that as well. I think there is certainly a place for that. Raising your profile is not always for everyone. It may come at certain times of your career, and other times you're happy just to go on, focus on your students and do a really good job.
Exactly, and you had so many ideas when it comes to expanding our network online or face to face. How can we find time, and not get lost? Because time is precious. It's like money. We really need to budget.
Yeah, completely.
Wisely.
I think I would say again here, it's about time and it's about your bank of energy, isn't it? Because some things don't take much time, but they take energy. So for example, I'm talking about looking at step 2 there. I was talking about looking at your professional profiles, looking at your profiles on Facebook, on LinkedIn. And I'm sure a lot of us will sit in an evening or sit on the train and just flick through our social media without actively engaging. So I'm suggesting that you don't take any extra time, but you find the energy to make little comments and to start to engage in a meaningful way. Mm-hmm. So it's about, rather than dedicating big bits of time to something like this, it's about finding the little moments that you can possibly up your game and find that little bit more energy. Rather than turning into a big overwhelming task. This should be enjoyable. It shouldn't be something that you find, it shouldn't add to your stress or your workload. It should be something that makes you feel good. Something that's, going along to a conference, doing something like this today. I know when we finish here, I'm going to be buzzing. This is enjoyable for me. And hopefully, people watching just now, you'll remember my name, you'll come and say hello to me, and we might even have a coffee over in a conference sometime. These are enjoyable things. So, it's about the little bits and enjoying them.
Actually, Fiona, I have a question following to what Hedy just asked. And you mentioned in the last question in the question time, basically, if I were a very I've just been recently promoted. Let's say if I recently promote as a director of study, and I haven't got much experience on teacher training, and because I came across with a DOS previously. The DOS was struggling to encourage the teachers to join her CPD session, because as a British Council school, obviously we try to encourage the teacher to come as much as possible. But often some teacher, they just want, okay, it's 12 o'clock. I want to go home. I don't want to stay a minute longer. What would you do in that case? Because obviously that as a DOS, you need to make sure you're giving regular training to your teacher as part of the...
That's a great question, Janice. And, I sympathize. I remember being that inexperienced DOS with a very experienced teaching team, and how do you approach them? How do you get them to buy in and to come along? Again, I think I would say a number of things here. I think the key is short one-to-one conversations with each of your team to find out what they want from you, what they want from the school, what they can give back, and how we can play a joint part in developing and also raising awareness of the teachers that as I say time and time again, it's about getting enjoyment in your career. None of us in ELT, I can't imagine this changing anytime soon. We're not going to become millionaires. We're not doing this for the money. We're putting in a lot of time and effort. So it's about encouraging the teachers to see that CPD that we provide for them in a school will help the school and our students, but it will also help the teachers remove some of their stress, make their job more rewarding. So the first thing I would say is one-to-ones, find out what makes them tick. The next thing that I would say is get them involved, get it to come from them, identify some champions, some experts within your team, and encourage them to lead and encourage them to share. I like bite-sized things. I like 15-minute sessions. I like 30-minute sessions. And that can be easier if you've got teachers in the team that you know are experts in some area, but they don't want to lead. Ask them to do a little 15-minute slot. We have half-hour clinics, drop-in clinics for various areas in our school. And half an hour seems quite manageable for a teacher. So it's about the DOS having the enthusiasm to get people on board, but then tapping into the expertise of the team. The last thing I would say there again for the inexperienced DOS is to refer them back to the British Council CPD framework, because that is an objective grid. It's not coming from the DOS. It's not a subjective idea of the various stages of a teacher. And that can be used by the DOS and the teacher for the teacher to identify where they are in their teaching career. And again, get the CPD ideas to come from the teacher. So a lot to do, but if anyone's in that position, I'm always happy to have a one-to-one chat about something like that, because I do empathize. I have been in your shoes if you're going through something like that.
Wow. And Gobi responded as well, and she says that I think if the CPD is relevant to what they do, teachers will follow.
Yeah. Yes, completely.
Exactly. Fiona, can I have a question about our homework?
Yes.
So you asked us that over the next month, we should think of 250 achievements we've had in our life. And why exactly 250? Is there some meaning about that? Or?
Good question. This, to be honest, was not my exercise. I came across it, as I said, 21 years ago. I went to a big recruitment company in the city in London, and they suggested doing this exercise in order to enhance your CV to get a job. It was nothing to do with the LT. For me, I think 250, because it takes people's breath away. When you first say it to someone, your automatic reaction is, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. And that's where it becomes so rewarding, because we can do it. We can find 250. And I remember the first time I did that exercise, the feeling that I had was such elation. So I think it needs to be a big enough number for it to be a real challenge, but it's a good, fun challenge to do.
That's definitely. And exactly. So I have one more question, if you don't mind.
No.
If somebody is watching us, listening to us now, or watching this discussion later, then and feels a little bit uncomfortable or at unease about expanding their network and or moving out of their comfort zone, you know, that strange feeling, then what might that mean?
I think then I would say take baby steps, take little steps. Don't be too hard on yourself. As I said, less is more. I have built up many contacts online that I then learn from. To give you an example, someone that I've met on the online ELT communities, I now ask for technological ideas to bring back into my classroom. So I'm getting some kind of CPD for our school from someone that I've met online. Identify just one or two people. I mean, as I said, you know, I began by saying, add me to your Facebook, everyone, if you're keen to. And I'm not suggesting that I'm going to turn the world alight with ideas on my Facebook page. All you'll normally see is my dog. But have a look at my friends. You'll see some names. These people are always happy to be added and to engage with you. And that's what I find online, maybe even more so than face-to-face. Although ELT is such a warm and welcoming community that going up to, I'm sure some of you have heard of Tessa Woodward. I read Tessa Woodward's books when I was doing my diploma. I'm a big fan of hers. I think she's done amazing work in her career. And I saw her at a networking event at TEFL a few years ago. And I was shy, but I went up and I talked to her. And, you know, what have I got to lose? The only thing she's going to do is not talk to me. And of course she talked to me, and she was charming and lovely. I contacted Adrian Underhill and asked him to come into school, and he did, and he's now a friend. You know, these people out there, when you're building your network, take a chance, jump in one step at a time and see where it leads you.
Thank you so much, Fiona. And this takes us to the end of this webinar today.
Thank you very much. And what I would just say to everyone, just to finish, is just think about what makes you happy in your career, because I think that's the most important thing. Your students will benefit, you will benefit, your school will benefit, as long as you're happy, developing, thriving in what you're doing.